everybody. Welcome to my storytelling YouTube channel. This is Hua. I'm so happy to have you back here. Today I'm going to share with you a story that I wrote titled Tales of the Consorts. This is a first person shifting point of view, and it speaks about King Helion, his queen, and his two consorts inside the palace walls. So I hope that you enjoy the story. Come in, relax, and enjoy.
You're sleeping with someone new, and I'm in New York for the first time. I hate this weather, but I like the view. It makes me think of new beginnings. Here's to new beginnings. I can't sleep alone, 'cause if I do, I'll think of you. The nights are so long, wondering if you miss me too. I'm losing myself in the city.
Queen Leona. Palace walls bleed. They bleed so much, and nothing can keep it from stopping. I can't pretend to ignore it, but I also cannot prevent it. I was arranged to become queen when I was barely 18, a young girl whose heart was stuck on the fields of flowers and thoughts of a prince riding on a white horse. Except my prince rode a black horse, and he raised an army to fight for lands that came with pretty servants. I have watched from my tower as my king rode off into the battle gallantly and returned with wounds that infested with pus for weeks. Yet when he awakens, it is only to begin another war for yet another reason I am not to understand. My place inside these walls has been to birth lineage, honor my king's name, and love the people who cannot seem to understand why the king bleeds for them. The palace guards have to stop the citizens from entering on account of their hands wanting to wring his neck for the choices the advisors on his board forces him to make. And although the world gains his favor always, I am left lonely and without an embrace I trust. And this has always been my life from the moment I entered the bridal chamber to the day my hair strands began to change hue. Yet I am uninvited to the king's chamber at times, and in his bed lies a young maiden whose breasts are supple and her skin taut with the gentle laughter I once knew how to echo. But because of the path I was forced to walk upon, I locked up that part of me and forced a smile that everyone thought was rigid, and pretended to give a light in my eyes when I saw His Majesty walk past me. The world I live in is no fairy tale, and it is far from being a romantic tale of everlasting love from a king to his queen. Until you have walked the path a queen does, you will never understand the true hardship one has to endure. A woman such as me can only pretend that life is full of blossoming flowers that carry a gentle tune when she walks into a room, and at night she performs a duty that would give the king honorable sons to carry on his name. This is my story. I am Queen Leona in the insufferable pain that has chained me for the past 3 decades, that has left me fighting to have a breath of fresh air. These walls bleed. They hide secrets, and they carry a stench that make me gag. But I know that I am not alone, and the women who share his bed will each tell their own tale of how enduring their lives are, but I am not them, and they are not me. I gave up my youth, my maidenhood, my life for a man whose head is wanted on a platter everywhere he roams. One wrong word, and an arrow is dedicated to end his life and leave him where the sun cannot touch. The men who walk with him desire all he has, and the women who watch him wants them in their bed. Yet I am the one who is left untouched and misused. Here, in the palace walls, is where the dying speaks and the living lies. The morning sun peeked through the balcony of my chamber, and I felt an odd sense of welcoming even though I had woken up alone. The king had once again spent the night with Consort Angelina, and talk among the servants was that she hadn't had a monthly cycle since a fortnight ago. Perhaps this would help make her his new favorite, since she'd been secretly sleeping with his captain of the guard. Of course, I kept this hidden from the heirs of the king. Who am I to speak such tales of affairs? I am, after all, a woman whose mind was simple. The door opened, and my chambermaid, Penny, walked in bearing a basin of rose water. Penny had been given to me from the king the moment I walked into the palace walls almost 3 decades ago. The woman and I had seen many years together, and we had aged from young girls to women in each other's eyes. Penny, does the king have any guests coming today? I asked. She looked at me and dipped the towel into the water. I believe Lord and Lady Foxword are coming for a chat about their banquet they plan on throwing for their daughter's 16th birthday, my lady. I made her smirk as she handed me the towel. I unwrapped it and began washing my face and hands. Oh, to be so young and so supple again. My lady, you are young and supple more than you know. All the woman in the land desires to be you. The king's eyes are never off of you when you are in his presence. Chuckling, I replied, My, Penny girl, you are sprouting poetic bonnets today, aren't you? The king has not come to my chamber for a month now. He's been rotating between his two consorts, and I hear one of them might bore a babe soon. Penny smiled and took a comb to begin brushing my long black hair. Be it ever so, my lady, but you must remember that you have already won in childbearing contests. You've given birth to 2 royal princes, and they are strapping young lads who are off on studies in Spain. The king speaks of them with delight always. I lowered my gaze and stared at my hands, which had grown old with age spots. The king has been brooding lately, and that only means one thing: war that is coming soon. Bloodshed is too much to bear, and although he would not share his terrible endurances with anyone, I know him more than he knows himself. When he is this way, it is only because he is fighting a battle he knows he cannot win. My lady, you are not just beautiful, but wise in your ways. You hold the king's best interest at heart. I shall hope so, came the booming voice of the king as he entered my chamber. King Helion was still wearing his sleeping gown, with a black robe pulled over to keep the cold from his body. Penny bowed and left the room as he picked up the comb she'd been using and took over her duty. My dear queen, is that a yearning I heard in your voice just now? He asked as he took my strands in his hands. I dare not confess, I whispered. He leaned down and tilted my chin up, forcing me to look at him. The pair of eyes that I had seen since 18 years old looked back at me with a gentleness that always seemed to make me lose my breath. I was in love with this man, and he never seemed to know. Confess, he ordered. I swallowed hard, feeling my heart thump against my rib cage. My king, my heart holds nothing but ice. You said that yourself, did you not? He smiled and let me go. You are my ruler with me. I have never forgotten who you are, yet you still like to play little games that has my head spinning. How is Consort Angelina? I asked, changing the subject. He paused, and then he turned me around. Is this the cause of your morning spat with me? I spent the night with Consort Angelina? I didn't answer. He smiled and set the comb down. I dare say I have struck a chord with you. I want you to understand, my lady, you are my queen for many reasons, and that is because you hold no jealousy in your heart. Consorts are a must for peaceful purposes, but only you bear my legal name as my one true wife. For what purpose should we argue over this little matter instead of you giving me what I came in for? I lifted my eyes to him. And what is it that you demand of me? He smiled and lowered his face to me. A kiss good morning, my queen. I hope that is not too much to ask. I have been away from your lips for far too long, and although many have come to gift theirs to me for free, I always want to pay to have yours instead. Smile for me, and let me enjoy bitter sweetness for my queen. Hmm? He reached for me and pulled me closer, his scent filling my lungs, making me feel safe. As he lowered his lips to me and kissed me, I could hear my heart beat loudly. and I wondered if he could hear it too. And what was supposed to be a good morning kiss turned into him branding my body.
I gave my heart to a stranger. Father, forgive me for it, but I don't wanna back.
When I arrived in the dining hall dressed and ready to face the day, the two consorts were already seated by the table. Consort Summer came from a broken family whose father had a gambling debt, and she was sold to pay it off. But the king had found her and took her in first as a servant and later promoted to consort. Consort Angelina was forced to marry for military power, and although she was a kind face, she had a vicious heart that spouted poison. As I made my way to the table and took my seat, the king arrived after leaving my chambers to get dressed. Our morning love-making had been a gentle awakening that I hoped would be repeated. When I saw him and he smiled at me, I felt my cheeks blush. I noticed Consort Angelina's eyes darted toward me, and she picked up her cup of tea and drank quietly. The king took his seat, and the servants began serving us healthy helpings of breakfast. My ladies, it is a beautiful morning to find all three of you together with me. May we always rise and be together as a union, the king said as he took a drink from his cup of tea. Consort Angelina smiled, and she shifted her eyes downward. Your Majesty, you have slipped quietly out of my chambers that I did not get to bid you farewell. Were you rushing off to attend to something important? The king smiled and sat up taller. My business outside of your chambers is not up for discussion, Consort Angelina. Whether I am rushing off to affairs of the heart or public is mine to attend to alone. You are speaking rudely in front of others. You should know better. She looked up at him. My apologies, Your Majesty. I have spoken too harshly and offended you. It is not me you offend, but that of my queen, and the apology you so uttered should be said to her. I watched as Consort Angelina turned toward me and gave me a gentle smile. My queen, I apologize for my rudeness. I have assumed where I should not have. I waved my hand and she lowered her gaze. Do not fret, Consort Angelina. The king is being overtly kind, and do not take what he has said to heart. He stands for us all equally. King Helion gave me a soft smile, and his eyes twinkled lightly. A queen's status is queen behavior. I would advise you both to learn from her if you should require me to be gentle with you in the future. Now, let us enjoy this moment together.
I know you've been hurt, I know that you're trying. The boss is complaining, your phone's always ringing. Outside there's the cold wind, inside the monotony. Baby, we need an exit from this. Honey, we need that sweet release. I know it will feel them, the electric feelings, you and me.
As I thought, as soon as breakfast was over, Consort Angelina came to corner me in my healing garden. She and her handmaiden appeared out of nowhere, and as her eyes met mine, her face turned almost purple from jealousy and hate. The king was to be in my chambers, my queen. How is it that he ended up in yours? She asked. I looked up at her as I clipped off a few roses to put in my vase. Consort Angelina, are you implying that I sought him out? Did you see me enter your chambers to lure his majesty to my arms? She stepped forward and her hands tightened into fists. He has not touched you for a month. Why suddenly did he come to you after he has spent so much time with me? I handed the roses to Penny and gathered my dress together to walk to her. I was not afraid of her. She was a petty woman with a lot of secrets. Secrets I already knew. Consort Angelina, if he has touched you for so long, your womb must be carrying his child by now, I should hope. She did not answer, and I smiled. Consorts who do not give birth to heirs soon are replaced easily, but I assume you do not care much because your heart is not with his majesty. Her face turned sour. What are you speaking about? I have never been unfaithful. Truly? I asked as I turned to glare at her. Can you honestly stand here before me, the queen, and tell me that you have not lain in another man's arms. I have not, she declared. I smiled and clapped my hands. What a marvelous performance, Consort Angelina. Your acting has improved immensely, and I am sure that the king will never doubt your love for him. Just be sure that when you give birth that the child looks like the king and not like someone else. She bit her lower lip and walked away from me as Penny handed the scissors back. The secrets inside these walls was not easy to hide, and I have seen it all. I was not named queen for being a simpleton. I have my wits and my honor that keep me wise in ways no one could take away. If the consorts wanted to start a battle with me, I would walk away unscratched, while the world around them would fall into pieces. I had seen enough, lived long enough to know where the truth would get me, and where lies would be buried. My queen, Penny said, I am sure she will return with a boon. I clipped off a rose and handed it to her. I am sure she will. But do send someone to keep an eye on her. The king's reputation is on the line if she decides to take her affairs public. I worry not of her but of him. I do not want him to be made an example and become a laughing matter by the citizens. Yes, my queen. This place, my healing garden, is the one corner of the palace where I can find peace and serenity. Here, I am myself. No lies and no masks. I can speak my heart out to anything here without judgment. But also here is where I can cry my heart out to the plants that stand with a ready ear to listen. For the past month I had been visiting this place, crying my eyes out to the many stalks of roses and herbs, asking why the king had turned a blind eye to me after so long. But today I knew the truth, and it was not because of him, but Consort Angelina, who could possibly be pregnant with someone else's child, and needed an escape to save herself. Being unfaithful to the king was a life and death suit, and if you did not care to keep your head, a hidden affair was easy to accomplish. But once the king found out, you would be made an example in the gallows, and your head on a stick for all to see. Through my many years at his side, I had seen him off 2 consorts' heads due to lies and hidden affairs. I had watched their heads being eaten alive by flies and maggots until it became nothing but an unrecognizable skull that held a name I was now forbidden to mention. My king, my husband, the man who spilled his seed inside me to give me my sons, could be a man whose hand held sword and blood. Thank you for tuning in to Chapter 1. Chapter 2 will be up shortly.